In this video, I wanted to continue on adding the other functions, making them event-sourced events like creating primitives and movement, which currently involves the menu. And so let's kind of trace through this, and while we're doing so, maybe create some diagrams. So the way we create things is through the menus. Let me start my server. So the page loads, we get this svelte welcome component, what do you call this, modal. We enter the space, and after the modal goes away, now we can interact with the rest of the page, which is kind of a little bit confusing because why see it if you can't interact with it? Because the modal has to be dismissed first. So one thing we can do is maybe hide some of this stuff and then unhide it after you've entered the page. But let's write that as a to-do. Maybe hide immersive what is it? Glasses and VR menu until modal is dismissed. Okay. And we have this menu button that brings up a menu, and it looks like these things still work, so these are not part of event sourcing. Although they could be, but I'm thinking they don't change the space and they're sort of private for a user. We can't really see what he's doing. Although it might one day be useful if you're doing interactive tutorials to see what menu he's going in, but I anticipate for now we're going to change this a lot, so I don't want it permanently in an event stream as part of the API. So these things still work, I think. Let's see, let's produce a grid. Yeah, that still works, but none of this is event sourced, so we want to change that. And then we can also mute, unmute, and I think maybe, I'm not sure if we want this to be event sourced. Yeah, probably not. Let's say that everything being event sourced right now has to do with the contents of the room that people can see. And we can close the menu. So where does this come from? And so we have this menu manager here that governs the different planes, and there's two modes here. One for full screen GUI, and one is a RISP plane, browse plane. And what creates menu manager? Menu manager is created by the scene manager. So I think just in the constructor, oh no, we create it after we create the camera. So this is where we create menu manager. Menu manager is created here. Okay. So part of this is maybe we can create menu manager after the choice to enter a space is made and modal is dismissed. Okay, let's talk about menu manager. Menu manager is going to rely on some other states in order to determine when to create the VR overlay menu. So let's see, they're kind of two menu managers. One for full screen and one for VR. Like, they could potentially be separated. So first, we get past the orchestrator and the scene. We listen for camera ready, and that creates the full screen UI. So this is always created because even if you're in VR, we get a camera ready. But you also listen to controller ready, and if a controller becomes ready, then you mount, especially the left-hand controller, you'll create a VR menu overlay. And then if the state has changed for the XR, you will switch between the controller menu or the full screen menu. So in fact, if you're exiting VR, you dispose of all of this stuff. Whoops. You dispose of the browse plane, wrist plane, wrist GUI, browse GUI. So what are these things? Okay, so the GUI is a texture GUI and is bound to the plane. So you'll tear down all that stuff if needed. But when you're entering XR, you'll dispose of the full screen GUI, and then you'll create that stuff again when the controller is ready. So in here, we will create the plane, and all this kind of stuff. Then we have this render function. Finally, these are just preparing the textures to receive the content of the menus. We create this advanced texture, and then we have a method called render, and this will take a look at the state and make them GUI controls. So let's look at the state to controls. There's two menus. One is the menu control and one is the browse control. This is the menu control, and this is the browse control. So two squares of content. The browse control looks to see if the menu is opened. So here's some kind of value, true or false. If it's opened, then we go process a method that is named after the menu page. So we have another observable that contains a string for the type of menu to render. Otherwise, it's null. And then we return an object which has the state of the menu and the state of, the controls of the menu and the controls of the browser. This one just also takes a look at if something is opened or not and renders, I guess, components to show. And these are the browsing functions. So if you're on a main, it delegates this to construct the components in their respective classes. So if we were to diagram this out, let's save this file. Save now. Let's create a new file and let's call this menu manager. So I guess Signal Hub plays a big role here. Signal Hub 2. Menu manager. If we get a signal called camera ready, what do we do? Then maybe menu manager says we'll create full screen GUI. Right, camera's ready, go create that. But then if we get a signal that says you're entering VR, so entering XR will happen first. So XR state changed, entering XR. Then what you'll do is you'll tear it down. So I guess we don't need this is not a system here. We'll just do note over menu manager, create full screen GUI. Then if you're entering XR, then you tear down full screen GUI. Note over menu manager is full screen GUI dispose full screen GUI. And then you'll also get a signal that is controller ready, and that's when you create wrist menu. And if you go the other way, so if you get Signal Hub to the menu manager, you're saying exiting XR. Then you say dispose wrist menu and create full screen menu. Alright, so this is basically the menu manager's job. On top of that, there are things that are sending messages to the state. So menu manager decides which version of the menu you get, either a full screen or wrist, and what are the signals that are changing the content. So these messages only affect the choice of VR menu versus full screen menu. Okay, so then we have some listening to menu states. Okay. So we're also listening to mic muted, menu opened, and menu page. The combination of these leads us to change the state. Pause and plug in. Okay, so there are other signals. So signal hub, menu manager, and I guess we can make it look so mic, mute, or menu open, or menu page. And this affects the control state. I guess you just re-render. Re-render. So if any of those things change, re-render. So I'll put ... for any others. Slash n ... Okay, so these are just permanently there. Now I think I can jump into the primitives area to make them emit different kind of messages, because that's where the event sourcing comes in. Right, so also I'm not sure that these need to be observables. They can just be regular events. Maybe we can look into that. So convert observables back into events for menu. What I mean by that is that currently we have some observables, like here's a menu page, but we can easily just say this is a kind of local event. It can be one of these, like menu opened or not. That would make it more consistent so that we don't have this thing hanging out that you actually have to instantiate here and define here, when the others, we don't really have to do that. So potentially, not sure yet. But we're setting out today to capture the primitive and moving around as events. So that happens to be emitted in one of these menu pages, which is the primitives. So primitives loads the specific menu for these this list of tools. And let's see. Looks like we are creating a kind of message now, and also just creating the thing locally right away. So we're having a callback that happens when you click it, and we're emitting simultaneously to Spaces API. So here's our callback, and the callback is returned in this component. Okay, so callback. So array, the scene, active camera array. I'm not sure about this API. I think for now, let's just put this at the origin, because I don't like it appearing in front of my face all the time. Okay, so we have a name for the new primitive. That's fine. And we have a UUID for it. That's fine too. And then we have some components. Okay. Alright, so it seems we need to dictate the shape of this message. Let's go to Signal Hub. The shape of, types. If we want to create a primitive, the message should be create primitive. The payload is that and timestamp. So the payload is, I want to know the type of the primitive. So, or maybe create entity. Or the type, which is might be a list. So currently we'll support box and sphere, cone, and what else? Grid. Then it can take, it also needs an ID. It also needs a name. And then it needs components, which I guess can be a list of components. So then we're not going to use commands right now. Get rid of this. Export type component is something with a name, which can be position or rotation or, actually let's do it this way. It could be named position, and the value is a numbered array. Or it can be, name is rotation, and the value is a numbered array. Or it can be scaling, value is a number array. Or color, the value is a string. So you can give however many components that you want that are applicable to it. And that should allow us to create an entity. I think plane might be inherent too. Alright. Can I change this? Okay, now, I actually don't mind double quotes everywhere. Does it matter? JS, single quote versus double quote. What's the difference? Even double quote at the end, represent a string on the subject. Alright, let's use double quotes then. Bam, bam, bam. This to this, because in Elixir we have to use the double quotes for most strings. Okay. So for here, our components are going to be a list of name is position, and value will be, for now let's just put it in the origin, 0, 0, 0. Okay, that's position, and is rotation, value is 0, and scaling, value 0, 0, oh, 1, 1, 1, and that's it. Those are your components. If your primitive is grid, let's make your components position and rotation this. How do we do this? So, so you want to find and replace the one element in there. Which is harder than just referencing it by name. So maybe, okay, let's undo. Undo. So we can just set this value to be 0, 0, 0. This can be, again, value 0, 0, 0, and 1, 1, 1, and then this can be 0, this, and this, and this can be like X, Y, Z. Okay, so that's easier that way. Then we want to convert components to a list. So components equal why are you complaining here? Components equal object entry components, or yeah, components. And what does that give you? It gives you a map with key value, and so you get a type, which is the key, and data. The type of component, yeah, I like a type. Type is fine. Type, key, data. Let's make this type. And make this data. So here, the data is sometimes an array, so it's much more convenient to always store it as an object. So if it's an object, then maybe we do want x is a number, y is a number, z is a number. But we also want an efficient transport, right? I don't think this is too bad. Rotation. I don't think this is too bad. Okay, so this is always an object, and this is always key. Okay, so over here, and I think components, object entry components, and then map over like this. If key equals color, then we don't have, we're not passing color right now. Now let's just do this map over something, return something, and then this is going to be a key and a value, and we want you to return a hash with type being the key and data being the value. So what's this? It won't let me reassign this. Const component list. Cannot find name component. What is this? Oh, okay, I must have screwed up some kind of scope here. So this callback is here. Components is inside this callback, and I'm not inside this callback. So we need to do this. so component list becomes, or just make this components again, components. Components is that. Okay, it doesn't like it, because I guess it's typed and you're screwing up the type. Very good. Okay, don't reassign. So now we can build an event, and we want to emit an event, but we also want to create the object ourselves. So let's say signal hub. All right, let's build the event. Event equals types dot whoops. Import event from where is this? JS. There we go. So that is it. So this is what kind of event? This is a entity event. It's not assignable to the type event. We need a message, which is going to be create entity. Create entity. Let's just replace all single quote with double quote. Start with this. Import is never used unless you import type. Import type. Right. What's this? Control or void must have a single iterator method that returns an iterator. Okay, we'll address that later. Call back. I think we don't need this. Entity event. It's still not complete because we need the payload. P is missing. So if you're in create entity, so it helps out with the payload. So what kind of payload is possible? We need type. Okay, the type is the prim. string is not assignable to blah 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 blah. I think we can relax this here. Let's just make this a string then. Okay, so it is type of prim. What else? ID. Yes, we have an ID. ID, right? What's it called? UUID. Name is name. So if you just say name, what else? And components, which is the component list. And here, type, blah blah blah, data number is not assignable to type component. Alright, so I really think the storage might benefit from not having to specify a map. I think arrays are better for this. Also, the transmission will be slightly smaller. Yeah. Well, though, what's the problem here now? I want an object, so you can give it an object with value. Why does it need an object, though? Yeah, these are events. Let's not be dictated by how it's going to be stored. Let's just say that this is data, and this will be a number. That's the component. Okay, components. So type is a string, and data is a number. Is not assignable to type component. Components list. So we're asking it to accept it. So it's kind of cheating, but can we import that component? Okay. And what's the error? Conversion of type string data number to type component may be a mistake because neither type sufficiently overlaps with another. Let me just finish out this video. So in the primitives, I ended up constructing the entity and then emitting an event. So outgoing emit to everyone else, but we won't get our own event. So I'm also tricking the system by simulating an incoming event directly to ourselves right away. So this one doesn't go through the network. We won't have any delay. And in order to perceive the event in Scene Manager, we're handling all incoming events in this area up here for all events. So I added a create entity listener, and it does what it does before, find or create mesh. It has a similar looking API, but it needed some slight modification in here where we have the entity. So this API generally works. It goes down and processes each component, where the component takes data, and previously was looking at X, Y, and Z, but we've now decided to use this array format, and now it works. So if you go in here, and if you go into primitives, you can now create a box or a cone. And I think this will work in another browser that we should see a similar thing coming out. Now, this doesn't load previous information, but if we click grid, the grid appears. Let me turn this over, and if we go cone, box, sphere, okay, so that part works. So now we need to implement the others, such as translate, color, etc. So we'll do that in another video.